We're going to get started. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. Happy Open Access Week, and thank you for your patience. It's always something, right? But here we are. I think we're good to go, and we'll get right to it. So thank you for joining us today for our Introduction to Open Access Publishing and Resources, featuring two of our very amazing librarians, Hannah and Matt. They're going to take over in just a second, but before I turn it over to them, I just wanted to go through a very quick, pretty standard housekeeping issues. So we are recording this session, as you would have just heard. I'll share a link to the recording within the next day or so you can revisit it whenever you need to. You can share it with other people. It'll just be on our YouTube channel, so you'll be able to watch that again and again. We're gonna have plenty of time for discussion after the presentation, so please hold your questions and your comments to the end. Those of you who are joining us remotely, you can type in chat and I'll read them out loud, or you can always unmute when we get to the Q&A at the end there. So, and for those of you online, if you could just stay muted throughout the presentation, that'd be really helpful as well. I think that's it for me. So now I'll hand it over to Hannah and Matt. Thank you all again.
Yeah, so I'm Hannah. I'm the Discovery Librarian here at Drexel.
And I'm Matt. I'm the Digital Curation Librarian here at Drexel.
Yeah. And so I'm in charge of our open access initiative. So if you have any questions, feel free to contact me after. So what is open access? Open access is the free, immediate online availability of learning materials, research, data sets, and creative works. Usually when we talk about open access, we're talking about books and journal articles, but other things can be made open access as well, including textbooks. So why should I publish open access? Being open access means that anybody in the world can access your publication as long as they have an internet connection. That's the only stipulation for them to be able to find your research. That makes it so that your research is public, it's high quality, it's visible to anybody who you'd want to see it. It allows for more open access to education, which is something that I think is very important today. And it allows scientific results to be reproduced.
And for folks in the scientific fields that are looking for that higher amount of references to your publications, it gives a lot more people access to your work. And so open access publications get referenced more just by nature of being open access.
There's also another reason that's coming up about why you should publish open access. There's been a federal mandate by the government that by 2026, research funded by any federal agency, including the NIH, NSF, should be made freely and immediately available to the public with no embargo. So this could mean that it's green open access. This could mean that it's published hybrid in a journal, which we'll discuss in a minute. There's also a lot of other funders besides these federal agencies that are shifting so that they want more publications to be open access. So the more available research is, the better it is for everybody. So there's three types of open access. There's more, but these are the main ones. So the first one we'll talk about is gold. So gold open access means that these research outputs, usually journal articles, are facilitated by a publisher. This means that the published article is made freely available as soon as it's published. This is also usually done through a payment. So either the publisher will pay the fee or the author will pay the fee, which is called an article processing charge, or APC. So some publishers charge anywhere from $1,000 to $5,000 to make your article open access. If you want to publish your article open access green, that's putting it into an institutional repository or digital archive, such as archive.org or bioRxiv, or our own institutional repository, Drexel Research Discovery. So these green versions are also not necessarily the published version. These are preprints, these are accepted manuscripts. These are something done before there's been a copyright placed on the item. There's also...
So preprint specifically is things that before the publisher puts their own branding on it, page numbers and whatnot. There's some wiggle room about which of those encounter are covered by what, and the publisher will usually have guidelines that'll let you know which version you can use.
And then we also have a hybrid model. And so that means that some articles in a journal will be open access while others might be paywalled. This is usually an author choice. So in any of our Drexel funded APCs, these are the hybrid model where authors can choose to publish open access while other authors in the same journal don't have to publish open access if they don't want to pay the fee.
All right. So now we also want to go over a little bit about copyright in regards to open access, because this is sort of that sticky legal aspect that really interacts a lot with open access. And when we're talking about copyright, it's very easy to think of it as sort of a nebulous thing, but what copyright really is, it's a bundle of certain rights related to your work and the ability to reproduce it, to make use of it, to distribute it, or provide access to it in some way. So when you create a work and put it in a fixed format, so by writing up your article or filming of that film, you own all of the copyrights to that then and there. From then, anyone who wants to make use of it needs to get a license from you to make use of it. You have to give them permission. And so, of course, you as the owner then can give license to people to do various things with the asserted rights, or you could transfer those rights to another person, which is historically how we've seen it with a lot of academic publishing over the years, was that as an academic, you could get your articles published without paying the publisher, but often they would require you to transfer the rights to them. Of course, once they're transferred, then for you to do anything with your own work, you have to make requests to get some of those rights back to make use out of it. So this is really relevant with open access because it's determining a lot of who makes those decisions about what level of access we can provide. Now, a sort of related aspect of this is Creative Commons, which a lot of folks have heard of. So Creative Commons in a very high level is honestly just a bunch of prepackaged copyright licenses that you can sort of assign to your work so that people can very quickly know, all right, I can provide access, I can reuse these materials. Oh, but I can't do that if I want to make money off of it. So it's letting people know right up front, this is what you can and cannot do with my work. Creative Commons is not public domain. It can easily be confused for that, but public domain, if you put work in public domain, you're relinquishing all rights to that work. People can share it, reuse it, completely remix it, and nobody can say one way or the other about that. But Creative Commons is a nice prepackaged way of telling people what rights they can and cannot do. Now, this of course also plays into wanting to put things in institutional repositories like Drexel Research Discovery or other subjective repositories, because you need to know what rights allow you to do that. If you own the work, then you just need to give a license to us or whatever repository you're putting it in to be able to store and share a copy of it. But if you've signed away those rights to the publisher, well, then you either need to request permission from them, or often on their websites, they'll have a list of sort of author rights, and they'll tell you sort of what you can and cannot do with it without requesting permission. Often they'll tell you sort of which sorts of places you can share things without having to make a request, and which version of the manuscript that you're allowed to share.
Yeah, and so Drexel University Libraries is a strong supporter of open access, and starting in January of 2024, we have a lot of new open access agreements. So these open access agreements are called transformative agreements, and they're with 6 or 7 different publishers that we have. So through these agreements, as long as you are Drexel affiliated, faculty, staff, students, and you have an article that's been accepted to a journal in one of the accepted publishers, you can have your article processing charge waived, and Drexel Libraries doesn't necessarily pay for it. It's put onto our contract already, so you can just publish for free open access. So we're going to review some of our. Can you all see my screen?
No, I think you'll have to stop sharing and then reshare, because I think I just did it to that particular screen.
So here we have our LibGuide. So this is our subject guide for open access publishing. This is where you will go to find any information you need about open access publishing here at Drexel. So it'll have all the basics from what is open access to the types of open access to additional resources if you have any other questions. But most importantly, it has our information for what you need to do if you want to publish open access under one of these agreements. So we have agreements with the Association for Computing Machinery, the American Chemical Society, BMJ Case Reports, the Company of Biologists, Elsevier, the Institute of Physics, the Royal Society of Chemistry, and Springer Nature. So of these, all of these you have to publish in a hybrid model. So when you do this and you come to this LibGuide, you should be able to go and visit our FAQ. So all of these are linked out to specific instructions. These instructions will tell you how to find which journals are included, because for something like Elsevier, only hybrid model journals are included. And so that means that anything that's gold isn't included. And so when you do this, you just need to make sure when you submit that you're putting Drexel affiliation, your Drexel email address, because we go in and we manually accept a lot of these articles when you request this APC waiver. And so having that information just kind of speeds the process along. Some of these, even if they're not, if you can't get the full article publishing charge waived, you will also get a discount instead. So there's some journals where instead of having the full thing, so for hybrid journals, for Royal Society of Chemistry, for example, you get an article processing charge waiver. But if you want to publish gold open access, any of their gold journals, you'll get a 15% discount instead, and that's still with your Drexel affiliation. So for example, if you go to one of our FAQs, it has the information regarding the Springer Nature, and you will be able to click a link that will show you the full list of journals that are included within this deal. Now these deals are being looked at on an annual basis. And so if anybody's interested in anything they're not seeing in our current list, please feel free to reach out to me. And it's something that we can put on our list for next year to try to find a way for you to publish open access for free. And I want to highlight, this is for undergraduate and graduate students as well, not just faculty and staff. And so I'm going to go back to our slides. And then our last tab is just a bunch of resources. These slides will be shared with you, so all of these hyperlinks will be clickable, including the link to the open access publishing guide. So now we'll take any questions. And feel free to type in the chat box or unmute.
Second. I do have one. Early in the presentation, you said that you announced that there was a federal mandate by 2026 that all research funded by a federal agency must be made available. Can you tell me about the impact of that to Drexel? So, for example, you might not have, or maybe even anyone on chat right now. Like how much Drexel research is funded by federal agencies, or have you at least gotten like applications to I don't know, we don't have application, but people who want to publish in open access and you know that they're getting funded by like a federal grant?
Yes. So through our open access agreement since January, we've had over 160 articles published open access. Of those, I believe 80% are grant funded, and the majority of those are by national ed agencies. And so they would be required to publish open access. It's kind of unsure right now whether they can use their grant funding to publish open access. Usually they cannot. So with this mandate, it's kind of unsure whether they're going to be able to. Or if they're going to need to find outside funding for that, such as these APC waivers.
There's also an extent to which some of this might be coming through more federally managed and funded subject repositories. So it's possible that a number of the works will still sort of fall into more traditional, sort of behind the paywall publishing models, but you can get a copy of the published version through, say, Department of Energy's portal. A lot of this is still being quite worked out.
I have one question. What are some of the ways that you are trying to make sure that our faculty members and students know about these new initiatives in terms of open access?
So all of our new initiatives are going out in our library email messaging. They're coming out in announcements. They're coming out in news. And then our subject librarians are our best resource, so they're able to talk directly to faculty and students if they're interested. But if you ever have any questions, please reach out to me or any of your subject librarians about potential deals, or if you think your research will qualify for one of these, but you're just not sure.
We do have a question in chat, if it's okay.
Yeah.
What type of questions do authors ask before taking advantage of OA APC waivers?
Yeah, so I think a lot of authors either don't know what it is exactly, and I think a lot get kind of confused by the messaging because you're asked whether you want to publish open access, you want to publish open access by paying for it, or you want to do it through the APC waiver. There might be too many options. If the waiver is an option, always select the waiver because it benefits you and it benefits the library, because we can see that benefit, that impact the library is having on those publications. We also have a lot of questions about our Creative Commons licenses. If you're publishing open access with Elsevier, you're required to pick a Creative Commons license. And there's 4 or 5 different Creative Commons licenses that you can pick from. So I think there's some questions about what those different types mean, because they are all abbreviations. So those are some common ones that we've gotten. And as far as our institutional repository, you are able to have us input things that are published. We just can't input the file itself. We can link out via the DOI, and then when we have access via the publisher, you'll be able to have that on our website. So it's more easily accessible to everybody. You can also, there's been a push for open data, so open data sets. So you can also input data sets into institutional repositories or into bioRxiv or archive.org.
I have one more question. So far you have about 7 or so publishers. Do you have any vision for adding new publishers?
We have a deal in the works that gives a discount, but we don't know yet when that will go live. So keep your eyes out for new agreements to come in the next couple of months.
Hannah, would it be possible to show the open access collection in Drexel Research Discovery, since we've got some time?
Yeah, so in Drexel Research Discovery, I usually have in it's gonna take me a minute. So in Drexel Research Discovery, if you want to see examples of articles that have been published using these agreements, you can go to our featured collections. And then in here, we have research supported by Drexel Library's OA programs. And you can see all of the articles that have been published using these open access agreements and these waivers. This also includes conference proceedings, which I think some people don't really realize. Yeah, and you can kind of see the way, these are the newer ones up at the front, but then you can see kind of citations increasing as you go throughout. And so it looks like we have 175 in here. And that includes our open access publishing fund, which was a pilot from 2022. 2.
21 or 2.
Yeah.
A couple years ago.
Yeah.
Yes, there were a few that we had a bit of money that we put towards that. I forget the number that we published though with those funds.
I believe it was 8.
Is that it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you sort by disciplines?
You can sort by
Oh,
unit
So,
over here.
okay.
So if you want to see, you know, anybody in the Urban Health Collaborative, you can see that. I also have statistics separately that show our savings if anybody is ever interested in which colleges are participating the
yeah, I
most.
would love to see that.
Yeah.
How much have we saved so far this year, Hannah?
$526,000. Yeah.
Just in time for open access week too.
Mhm. Which I also think shows just the amount that publishing open access can cost, because, you know, 165 articles and it's already $526,000. That's a lot that you can save just by using ABC.
I think after looking at this, I think about sharing this on Twitter.
Yeah.
On open access. I am sure there's some hashtags to reflect on this year's open access week.
Yeah, we definitely have more. A lot of these agreements are unlimited, so anybody can publish as many as they want. Some are limited, but we have not reached our limit yet for the ones that are. So we really recommend publishing open access. And a lot of these deals are multi-year, so this is going to continue for 25 and 26 as well.
And just speaking to social media, Jay, the Drexel libraries on all of our accounts are doing some, promotions and some information sharing on social media throughout the whole week of Open Access Week, now through, I guess it's Saturday. So if you follow us on Twitter or X, I suppose, Facebook or Instagram, you'll see different posts about what we're doing around open access here at the libraries, OA publishing, across Drexel. We've got some interviews that we've kind of reorganized for social media that you'll see in our accounts later this week. So do follow along. I think the hashtag is simply OA Week or OA Week 24. And you'll find stuff from us as well as lots of other libraries and organizations that are participating in Open Access Week. And we try to use that hashtag throughout the year as well, just to kind of keep everything connected so that if you're searching for it, you're going to find older information too, which can still be really interesting and relevant. So follow us on social media and tag us if you want to post about it yourselves.
Sure, I do.
And feel free to reach out if you have any questions.
Here's, I'll just put our social handle. It's the same for all of our platforms. Great, thanks. Rachel's putting some links in the chat, which I'll include in a follow-up email with a link to this recording, especially for those who are with us in person who may not be seeing the Zoom chat. So you'll get all that, so don't worry. Are there other questions in the audience on Zoom or here in person? We have plenty of time, so please. Can I ask a question about predatory publishing? You sometimes hear about these publishers who take advantage of authors and they just kind of take their money and then they don't really do anything. Do we retain a list of those publishers that we can share with people, or are there resources?
I don't know if we have an actual formalized list or if it's more reaching out to any of our subject librarians, any of our librarians here, especially those publishers that email you and ask if you'd like to publish with them. That can be problematic.
Are there other things people can look out for in terms of predatory publishers? Like that they should be kind of weary of and question, just if it seems weird, look into it.
I think anytime anybody uses the word boutique publisher, that can be a key. That's not really, some are fine, but you might want to be a little wary of those.
You certainly want to pay attention to like how communications are phrased. If they're promising incredibly fast turnaround time, that's much more likely to be a predatory publisher, just because anyone who's engaged in the academic publishing process knows it takes time to go through the whole peer review process. So if they're going to turn it around public submission to publication in like a month, this is probably an untrustworthy publisher. So there's things to keep an eye on. There have been lists out there in the past, but there's been some concerns about those because some of those tended to be a little antagonistic towards open access. So there's definitely a little bit of a smell test aspect, and we in the libraries are here to kind of help work through any concerns anybody has. So if you're looking to publish with a certain publisher and you're just not quite sure, feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to talk with you and help you evaluate.
Also, try to make sure that you're publishing with peer reviewed. If you're doing academic publishing, that's really important in most fields that you get a peer reviewed article.
So this reminds me of another question. Now, as we all know, generative AI has really entered in the scholarly communication. So the question is, how are the reviewers trained to identify or to at least see if the submission is created using generative AI?
I think that's something that we're just experiencing now, as you can see in some recent news articles. There's been some big name publishers that have published articles that ended up being generative AI or even plagiarizing things because they were using generative AI. So I'm not sure anybody has specific techniques yet that are documented.
I don't know that we have a good answer to that question, but it's a legitimate concern.
And I think that if we are following the retraction watch database, I expect that the number of articles being retracted, it could be from the open access too.
Yeah.
Because of generative AI issues, will probably go up in times to come.
Yeah.
Because slowly there will be some knowledge of these articles being published using this, and then the editors will be contacted, and then they will take investigation, and then the retraction happens. But by that time, it could be like 1 or 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And in that time period, people may have started citing those papers.
Yeah.
So it could really create some issues at the time.
That also plays into the existing general critique of sort of academic publishing that we're seeing right now with more third-party watchdogs, which people have various opinions about them, but there's been concerns about scientific replication that are not illegitimate, and generative AI is just going to make that more interesting.
Right, and then the question of open access codes, it could be an issue because generative AI can write the codes.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other questions?
So one more question for research discovery, Drexels. Will there be a category for open data in that, or you are linking articles from research discovery to another site where the data has been deposited?
So we are housing open data within the repository itself. We could start linking articles with the open data to each other, which is something we should probably start doing relatively soon. So not currently, but it's something that I will definitely put on my list.
Yeah, and how much is the limitation for data that is currently being stored?
If authors are inputting the data sets themselves, depending on format, it's a 500 megabyte limit. If they're giving it to us to import for them, it's a much higher. And I'm not sure what it is, but it is much higher.
So, what is the motivation behind this? That if you deposit, they get more.
I think it's mostly just a system thing. I'm not really sure why.
I'm pretty sure it's just system settings, but there's also an extent to where it makes a bit of sense just because we know what our storage capacity on the back end is, whereas our researchers who don't have systems access might not realize how much they might be overloading the cloud drive. So it's just helpful for us to have a little bit more play. Plus, uploading large files just inherently can be a little bit less stable. That opens up more possibility of file corruption.
Any other questions from anyone in any of the rooms?
Including the virtual one.
Any thoughts about considering putting senior design projects in research discovery?
I was under the assumption they were already in,
They
so
are. But every year, is it a scheme?
I'm not sure.
There's some FERPA related
There's some projects out there,
verifications.
but I'm talking about
We have
senior
to
design.
check about that.
Yeah, I want to say some senior, I guess maybe not design, senior projects are in, but I'm not sure. Yeah.
Anybody else? I don't wanna, prolong it, but I also wanna give people time if they need to organize themselves and get their questions. And if not today, we all said, we will send a recording, we'll send lots of links to other information, including contact information for Hannah and Matt, so you can always follow up with specific questions about the APCs and everything else that we're doing here. Cool.
Thank you for coming.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.